Hello everyone, I'm Mario DeSanto, and today we're going to talk about the infamous Fostex MN-50. I'm making this video in response to a video made by Eric at Soundcast Studios, where he reviews a piece of gear made by DIYRE that is a clone of this unit, and it's under their color series, I believe. And I watched this video, and I think that my unit sounds different than that, so I wanted a comparison video so people could hear what it sounded like, hear what the clone sounds like, compare, also get some brief background, and basically just a quick overview of what this unit actually is all about. So this puppy came out in 1984, I believe, and it was originally designed to be used with kind of like a Porta Studio type setup, maybe even a 4-track reel-to-reel. This was designed to be used with. You certainly can use it for that purpose. And you could either use it during when you're tracking or when you're mixing down. Now, what this thing is really known for is its built-in compressor. And if you just look this thing up, dozens of pages are going to come up on all these gear review websites and audio engineering websites talking how this thing's a secret weapon, and it was built to make trashy drum sounds, and you got to get one. And to some extent, it definitely lives up to its hype. I don't know if it lives up to the monetary hype that I've been seeing lately on eBay or Craigslist or Reverb or anything like that. These are going for $200, $150. And, just to give some context, 2 years ago, I paid, I think, like $25 or $30 for this. So somehow, with the pandemic and all this business, vintage gear has just been skyrocketing, and these things are getting out of control. And I think a part of the reason that the price of this has just skyrocketed in recent times is I think most people selling this on eBay or Reverb or anything like that doesn't really know what it is, because the item descriptions on a lot of these listings are carbon copies of previous listings that other people have listed. And I know this because for some reason I meticulously follow the price history of this thing on eBay. So I think people just look at old prices and go, oh, this thing was up for $200. Let's sell it for $200. Do not pay $200 for this thing. Oh my God, it's not worth $200, okay? If you can find it for a reasonable price, I recommend it. All this being said, I absolutely love it. I use it all the time. So, maybe it is worth $200. It's really up to the user. So I'm going to go over a quick overview of all the buttons and knobs this thing's got and what their function is right now. Okay, so this is the unit up close. We have the external power source up top here. We also have the option to use a 9-volt battery here. I often only use the 9-volt battery just because maybe this is just my unit, but when I use the external power source, funny things start to happen. I started getting extreme ducking, which, might be what you're looking for, but it's hard to use in a recording, in my opinion, so most of the time I don't do that. Up here we have the 4 tape-in connections with the 4 faders that goes to each subsequent connection. That'd be used during Mixdown if you wanted to mix, do a bounce down and save some tracks. We have the line in connection right here, and next to it we have the output connection. Now, over here we have the on and off switch. You could turn it on and just use the mixing functions. One more up makes the compressor in line with the audio path, so now the compressor is engaged. The compressor, the way we're going to be using it, we're not going to be using these tape-ins, and most people using this unit are not going to be using the tape-ins. They're going to be using this for the compressor to get that trashy drum sound or something along those lines. This input knob here is how we're going to be controlling the gain in to the compressor, and we're going to be connecting to the line in as well, I should mention that, which is picked here. You could also choose a mic option, where there's a high Z mic input right there. There's also a pad for that mic input. We're going to be using this main gain slider to basically alter how much compression is going to be applied to the signal. here is the release knob going from slow to fast. A lot of the times on these simple, two knob or two slider compressors, this release knob kind of acts as like, I'll call it like a intensity knob, if that makes sense. Like when this is fully in the fast position, you're gonna get a lot of pumping, and you'll see that in my demo. Whereas if you go to the slow release function, it's gonna be a more subtle effect. You're not gonna hear pumping. It's gonna be more tame. This basic characteristic can be applied to all compressors, but as I was saying, with the two knob compressor, it's really, really important to take note of that. There are also these two LEDs, and these two LEDs are your only indication of how much compression is happening. We have minimum and a max. When it's minimum, the compressor is kicked in. It is working on your audio signal. And when the max LED is lit up, it's basically saying you've hit the maximum gain reduction possible on this compressor. In other words, brick wall limiting. According to the manual, this thing has a fixed compression ratio of 6:1 and a fixed attack time of 0.5 milliseconds. 0.5 milliseconds sounds pretty quick for compressing drums or a lot of things. I would take that number with a grain of salt with this unit. Same with the compression ratio, just because with these types of units, all analog units really, compressors, the ratios and the attack times and the release times, depending on the circuitry, the type of compressor, it's a little subjective. So I wouldn't really take that attack time with, strict church-going abilities, This input knob here where we can control the gain, when you push this thing really hard and this compressor max signal maxes out, it starts to light up, you're pretty much using this as a brick wall limiter. So once again, that 6:1 ratio isn't really applicable, because most of the time when you're trying to get this trashy drum sound on this thing, you're going to be up here. It's going to be brick wall limiting, and that's where a lot of the funness comes out of this. And the release knob here varies from, according to the manual, 50 milliseconds to 1 second. I usually find somewhere in the middle. Once again, it kind of acts as a color knob, this thing, so in the middle is usually where I want it to be. On the back, you get a nice little block diagram showing how everything is connected and, all of its relation to each other and all that business. And I think that about wraps it up for this thing. Okay, let's get on to the examples. Being as this thing is infamously known for being a drum crusher and getting that perfect trashy sound that everyone's looking for, I will be showing an example of drums. Then I will be going to bass, which I've used this thing for bass before, and I think it sounds good as well. I'm going to do an acoustic guitar. I'm going to try to find a track that's a little percussive. I think the pumping adds to the... it adds a good effect to the acoustic guitar. And I'm also going to be doing vocals. I personally would never be running vocals through this thing. However, Eric's video at Soundcraft Studios goes over using it on vocals. So as a comparison's sake, I will be showing some vocals as well. Something to keep in mind is that with all low-end consumer equipment like this, the noise floor and, the background hiss it's definitely noticeable. And on quieter parts of sections, it can be unbearing to some. It's definitely recommended to use a noise gate if you're concerned about this. I personally don't use a noise gate for two reasons. One, I kind of like the background hiss. I like the garagey. That's kind of like the type of music I like to make. And two, I don't own a noise gate yet. So we deal with the hiss. Okay, first, we're going to start with the raw drum track. Alright, now compressed. Now, remember what I said about this being kind of the color knob. I'll run through that track again. I mean, listen to that pumping, that's crazy. Now, I usually track my drums with parallel compression, so let's have both the raw track and the compressed track going at the same time now. Let's hear this applied to some bass now. We're going to hear the raw bass first. Compressed bass. Now, I don't have a in-context mix of that song, but here is another song where I use the MN-50 on bass. Here's a taste at some vocals. First, we're going to hear the raw take. Walking down the street the other day, strolling through New York City, saw a girl at the end of a rope, figured I'd tell her she's pretty. Alright, now let's hear the compressed version. Walking down the street the other day, strolling through New York City, saw a girl at the end of a rope, figured I'd tell her she's pretty. I said, girl, what you doing? What you doing to me? Aw, girl. See how much that opens up when I put that on fast? What you doing to me? Aw, girl. Let's see that again. I'm gonna really emphasize the release, the effect this has. Walking down the street the other day, strolling through New York City, saw a girl at the end of a rope, figured I'd tell her she's pretty. I said, girl. Okay, let's get a little context to the vocal take. Walking down the street the other day, strolling through New York City, saw a girl at the end of a rope, figured I'd tell her she's pretty. I said, girl, what you doing? What you doing to me? Oh, girl, what you doing? What you doing to me? Okay, let's try this on acoustic now. First, you're going to hear the raw track. Alright, let's hear it with some compression now. Now let's get some context. Sorry, this is a really rough mix. All right, so hopefully those examples give you a somewhat good idea of what this thing could be used for. I know my methods aren't exactly scientific, but I like to give real-world examples to hear what it would actually sound like. As far as drum sounds go, I've used it so many times. I could think of like 5 examples right off the top of my head. Can't recommend it enough. I love this thing. Like I said, even though I think it's extremely overpriced, I wouldn't recommend picking one up. One thing I will say, though, is never buy a piece of gear just because it holds some sort of vintage aura that you need to get. And, we all fall down that rabbit hole every now and then. And, if it's something you're willing to spend $200 on, go for it. But I wouldn't spend that much. And also remember to check out the review that Eric at Soundcast Studios did the clone unit of this that's made by DIYRE. Thank you guys for listening. Please let me know what you guys think down in the comments. Thank you.
1:30 in the morning, can't sleep no matter what. 1:30 in the morning, feeling uneasy in my gut.